there. I am here with Lauren. We're going to talk a little bit today about the time commitment of horses, fitting them into your life, and returning to horses. So hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Do you want to introduce yourself and a little bit about your current horse world and kind of where you got your start?
Sure. I'm Lauren. I've been riding, if you add it all up, for about 20 years, but I did have a break of over a decade in that time. I've been back in the horse world for about the last 3 years, and I got back into it because my youngest daughter got into it, and so here I am now, a horse owner.
That's amazing. Yeah, and you have a very cute horse.
He's
I've seen
super
lots
cute.
of pictures of him.
He's super cute.
So what does that look like? Like, what does a typical day look like for you when you go to the barn?
We are very fortunate that our horse is at a barn that is on our street. So it is a 2-minute drive or an 8-minute walk. So we get to see him multiple times a day, which is awesome.
I'm a little jealous of you there.
It is perfect. I spent a lot of my life driving about half an hour each way, and that really makes it much more difficult. I stop and I see him before work at like 7 a.m. I just go out and see him, and he's outside, and he kind of like waits by the gate because he knows I'm coming, which is pretty cool. And then I always bring him a carrot because I'm a little bit of a horse spoiler like that. And then I go to work, and then after work, my daughter wants to ride, and I want to ride, so we usually go and see him then, and that's when we spend like most of the time with him, actually, like riding and cleaning his stall and cleaning tack and doing all that fun horsey stuff.
That's amazing. What was it like for you when you were first coming back?
When I first came back, I was thinking, well, I'm going to see how my daughter likes this. I got her because of the barn on our street. She was very familiar with horses. And when she turned 7, I got her a lesson for her birthday. And right from the second she got on, I was like, all right, she's into it. And after about 6 months of her going a couple times a month for a lesson, I was like, I want to ride too.
I don't blame you for that. So did you ride at the same place that your daughter was riding at, or did you find somewhere else?
Yep, we both rode together, which was really cute because we were able to get like a parent-child lesson. Since even though I was coming back, I was not a beginner, so I could ride on my own while the instructor had my daughter on the lunge line, and we would ride at the same time, which was really fun, and I could help her tack up. So that was a really good starting point.
Your horse now, are you taking lessons with him where you are, or are you guys just like continuing on your own?
We are taking lessons. So this barn where we are now is actually owned by a friend that I grew up riding with. So it's like a full circle moment that she built her barn on our street. Coolest thing ever. She teaches, so aside from us, her students are all like very high level dressage people. So we are her only students that are at like training level, but we each take 1 lesson a week.
That's awesome. And then Are you guys riding like pretty much every day, it sounds like, other than that?
Yep, we've been going 5 days a week. So usually he gets a weekday and a weekend day off.
That's awesome. That must be so much fun.
It is really fun.
Where does like a challenge come up, do you think? Like where have you gotten like stuck, if anywhere?
I think the difference between riding now and riding when I was younger is when I was younger, I never had a break. And so I just built my skills, and they got better, and I got better. And by the time I stopped riding, like I could ride most horses, most situations, like it's fine. And now I don't consider myself, for many reasons, to be that type. Like when I was looking for a horse for us, I was like, the first thing I want is a horse that's really chill and safe. And 15 years ago, that wouldn't have been, I mean, everyone would love that, but that wouldn't have been at the top of my list. I would have been like, I want these other things. I can work with a challenge. But at this point, I'm like, no, I'm not. I'll work with some challenges, but not like a wild horse.
Sure. I'm curious, how old were you when you stopped riding?
I was 28.
Okay. So, I mean, that if you had been riding for, 15 years at that point?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that the confidence was way higher than when you returned.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I don't know. Like, I took a little bit of a break. I've been consistently riding my whole life, but I've definitely, like, taken a year or two off in spots, and even just, like, that short bit, I realized when I come back how much more, like, kind of skittish I am. I'm like, oh my god, they're big. I forgot how big they are.
It's been a time warp too. I tell people all the time that as a rider, I'm like a time machine from the 90s, because the first time I was watching my daughter's first lesson, I was watching other people ride around in the arena, and I was looking at their riding pants and I was like, what's in their pocket? And I realized that the riding pants had cell phone pockets on the side, and they were riding with cell phones, and I was like, wow, I've never seen anyone do that. And then I remembered that there like weren't cell phones when I was riding before.
Oh, that's crazy.
That's how much of a time machine. But it also applies to horse riding too. In the 90s, it was a very different culture, and I definitely like worked with some really great professionals, but it was very much like the horse will go. And now getting back into it, the approach that I was seeing was very much more like it's a partnership. And if the horse doesn't go, then it might not be that the horse is bad. Like there might be something else that we need to consider. And that is not how it was. Yeah. So that was a very big difference too.
Were you riding dressage when you were riding previously, or is that new?
Yes. So I did ride dressage, and one of the fun things is my last instructor that I rode with and that I worked for, she taught me this past year. I was able to ride with her. She's in Florida during the winter, but while she was in New England, I was able to ride with her once a month last year from May through October.
That's awesome.
And so that was another piece that was interesting, was that I realized I was like, well, it's not just this other barn approach. Like she is very different than she was 20 years ago. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really nice that you saw that change in her too, because I think some people have instructors from their childhood who they like reconnect with and talk to, and sometimes they're like, oh.
Yeah, she's definitely grown with the times.
Then this is something that I think we touched on when we talked to Elaine forever ago. But how does it differ now that you're riding as like a parent versus when you were not a parent?
That is a very big difference. I think the biggest challenge is in my past, I was a beginner instructor. So I taught a lot of kids to ride, and some of my students were really good. Some of my students were just there because their parents signed them up. Like I taught a range of kids, but I had a lot of experience teaching. And so now that my daughter, who is 9, is riding, and we have our horse, but also before with the horse we half leased, even though she takes lessons, I'm responsible for her when she's riding on her own. And that means that while I'm not giving her new content, I'm the one on the ground being like, okay, this is what happens. Basically, I let her do her thing unless I see something either unsafe or she has an issue, and I'm like, let me help you with that.
Totally.
And that is very challenging because I have, for safety, I just have to say, this is what you're going to do now. And then there are other times where I'm like, okay, let's try to work through it. But because I'm her mother, she's not always like listening to exactly what I say and being like, oh, I believe you. She's like, but I don't want to do that. Or I'm fine. And that is very challenging because, well, it's like a mother-daughter relationship, but you also have a large animal involved.
Totally. Yeah. My first instructor was my mom. So there's no world in which she told me to do something and I didn't do it. Because those two relationships were definitely the same. So I'm sure that navigating that is like interesting.
It's different personalities too, because I have an older daughter who doesn't ride, but her personality, like even if she did ride, if I was like, this is what you're gonna do, she would do it. But my younger daughter's just not like that. She's like, well, what if we did it this way? And I'm like, nope, I'm saying do this now. And it can be a challenge.
That's fair. She does seem like the type to question all
Yep.
of it.
Which has its pros and cons.
Absolutely. You should question everything and also do what your mom tells you to when it comes to the horses.
Yep.
Do you notice any differences when you're actually riding now, like as a parent versus before?
I think I try really hard not to think worst case scenario. I had thought a couple times in the past, after maybe having like a near fall off, of like, what if I fell off and then I couldn't drive home and then what would I do, like that kind of thing. But I really try to think logically, even though horses are horses. I try to remind myself that I am unlikely to meet that situation, but if I do, I have told my daughter of the emergency plan. Because I'm like, this is what you're going to do if something happens. So that makes me feel better. And then I think the anxiety of like, I think it's more around, I'm not as, like my head, I know all the things that I used to know, but my body is not as good as it used to be at riding. Like there's this ability to do one thing on the right side while doing another thing on the left side at the same time that I used to have and now I don't. And so sometimes, I don't know, it's not, maybe not anxiety, but I get really frustrated.
Sure.
Because I'm like, I used to be able to do this and now I can't. Like, I know I'm doing it wrong.
Like, I know I'm doing it wrong. I know which muscles are doing it wrong and I can't make them do it right. That makes a lot of sense. That's such a healthy way to approach it. With your new horse and your kid, like, you've obviously supported your daughter in, like, doing horses and all that fun stuff. What has been, like, the benefit to you in making that effort to, like, keep that connected? Like, what benefit do you see to her or, like, to yourself or whatever it is?
I think it's been a huge confidence booster for her because most young kids don't now, especially now, like they don't ride bikes to the store anymore. They don't go out on their own and take little risks. And so for her, this has been such a great experience because she can be in charge of something, even whether it's cleaning the stall or keeping the saddle clean or walking down to visit Tanner and then walking back. And those are experiences that if we weren't involved in horses, like I don't know where she would get them.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Definitely the independence development is like a huge skill that I feel like is missing for a lot of kids.
It is. I mean, it's another thing that's changed in the culture since I was a kid. I mean, when I was her age, I walked half a mile to school and I might stop at a convenience store and you see all kinds of people you don't know and it's just normal. And now that is not a thing. So this is, when she's riding on her own, it's like, I can supervise, but she's the one that's got to do it.
Right.
And so that is a big confidence booster.
Yeah. The age of the barn rat seems to be kind of over, which is really sad thinking about like the time skip there. Like there are still a handful of kids who hang out at the barn, but like when I was a tween and early teenager, I was at the barn like 7 days a week, sunrise to sunset, doing whatever needed to be done. And I just don't see that anywhere anymore. Like I see people my age working as like working students and doing that, but like not the younger.
I don't see it either. And I grew up the same way. I was a working student in an awesome program from the time I was like 12 to 15. And that's where I learned all of like my instructor skills, was like being an assistant to the instructor. And I mean, same thing. I worked from, I don't know, 8 a.m. whenever I could get a ride there, and then I was there until 6 whenever I could get a ride home. And it was such a valuable experience. And as much as I mean, my daughter's a little bit young for that, and like the Saturday program I told you about, I think is as close as she could get at this point.
Totally.
But yeah, I don't see a place where those experiences exist.
Yeah, which is interesting. I imagine for myself, I know that if my parents had to drive me to the barn, wait for an hour and a half, and then drive me home, that might not have happened for me. The fact that I could go and be there all day was kind of part of the bonus, because then they were like, well, I don't have to worry about her for a day. She's like off and doing her own thing.
Exactly.
So I wonder what your thoughts are too on like, because I think that's part of why there are fewer kids riding, is because it's kind of weirdly less convenient in a way now that it's like more convenient for kids. If that makes sense.
That's true. And I think the price is really, I mean, the price of everything's gone up. But when I was a kid, I rode at it was a dressage barn, a big barn. They had about 6 school horses that were amazing. They had a huge lesson program, and they did group lessons that cost $15 an hour.
Oh my God.
So for me growing up, and of course, like my parents didn't have money for that, but I was able to work, and to work off $15, I got to ride a lot.
Yeah.
So, or even for me to save up money, I could do it myself.
Yeah.
But no kid is going to be able to save up $60 or $80 for a lesson. And so that's really unfortunate. But on the flip side, like, that's not instructors and barn owners being villains.
No, not at all.
It's that it costs so much to have horses and have hay and grain and people working at the barn. It's gotten really crazy.
Right. Like there was totally a point in time where having, a little rugrat running around and emptying your watered buckets and refilling them was absolutely worth the $15, and it wasn't costing you anything to add that kid to the lesson program. I don't think that's the case anymore when you have to factor in like hay and grain and all of that. Like if you have somebody who's working off everything, you are losing money on them.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And that's one of the pieces that I feel really glad to be able to give my daughter, because she's not going to have the opportunities that I had to work my way to get the skills to get a paying job. Because that's what I did, is that once I had that working student experience, I was able to go to a different barn and be like, I can teach, I can ride, I can do all these things, and they paid me to do it.
Yep.
But it's really hard to get those skills if you have to pay to get there.
Yeah. And I don't know, I feel like I see fewer and fewer paid positions popping up for that kind of like middling age group. Like if you're over 18, absolutely, you can probably find something. It's going to be competitive, but you can probably find something. But when I was like 15, 16, 17, I was helping with lessons and getting paid a little bit of money for it. And like, I just don't think that that's true anymore.
Yeah, it is tough. And I don't see a ton of programs now, but I don't see the big group lesson anymore, because nobody can afford to have, say, 6 school horses that will just go around.
Yes.
Like they have 1 or 2 school horses.
Yeah. Well, especially in New England. Like I've been talking to a couple of people who live in the Midwest, and they're like, oh yeah, this horse came about and they were so expensive, but it's because they're like really well done. And I was like, oh yeah, like how much? And they were like, like $2,500, $3,000. And I was like, I would kill for a $3,000 horse. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So I think that in some ways my like little New England brain also is like entrenched in it, which is really interesting, because obviously we're both in Area 1, like that's sort of the vibe. But I am curious if it's different other places. Not that either one of us really knows, but
Yeah, I don't know, because all I know is here and Florida's certainly not cheaper.
the people who are in Ocala are not the ones who are bargain hunting.
Mostly not. No. That was a fun opportunity that I did get when I was younger, that I got to go a couple times to Wellington, where my instructor, the one that I rode with again, she has a place there, and so I got to go and like ride some of her horses, and I never actually showed there, but I got to go and watch a lot
so
of
cool.
the musical freestyles and the show jumping, and it was really cool.
That's awesome.
My instructor had, when she came up here last summer, we went to visit her at the barn where she was, and she let me ride her horse that she's like showing pre-St. George. And I hadn't ridden in a double bridle in years. Like, she was just like, don't hold the curb rein, just, you know, just hold on to it, but you don't have to do anything. And I rode him, and I was just like, this is so amazing. But seriously, like, all I could do was canter him in a circle. Like, it was not like the old days.
Going back a little bit to, we were talking about how you have your horse right down the road, but that wasn't always the case. So I'm curious what your, like when you were half leasing Cloud, what a day when you went to see Cloud looked like.
That was a lot of fun, but it was double the time.
Yes.
So if we were leaving our house, it was 30 minutes to drive there. And then getting there, because the facility was so spread out, it was a long walk to get him from the paddock. And then, of course, my daughter wanted to lead him back up this very large hill that had lots of grass on it. And he just wanted to eat the whole way up. So it was a very long process getting him up the hill. But then once we got him to the barn, like, that was really fun. We would tack him up and get on, and I would ride him for a while, and then she would ride him for a while, and then we'd do the whole thing in reverse and gotta take him back down the hill. And by the time we get home, it would be about 4 hours. So to ride one time, it was 4 hours total, which for the two of us in that vacuum, it was great. Like, we're like, this is so much fun. But for my husband and my older daughter, they're like, we're not gonna get to do anything today. That is another piece of the puzzle. It's like, it's not just me and my daughter and the horse. We have a whole family. I have a full-time job. We got to fit it in.
So I'm assuming, were not going 5 days a week necessarily.
No.
When you were half leasing Cloud.
We were doing, it was 3 days a week. So it was 2 practice rides and a lesson.
Nice.
Yeah.
And did you guys get to like split the lesson when you were split the time, or?
We kind of did different things. Like, at first I was riding him in the lesson, and then she was riding a school horse, but then we ended up like, she would do a lesson one day on him and I would do a lesson another day. So we kind of did different things, but we did get to take him to a show last summer, and that was really fun.
Do you plan on doing any showing with your current horse?
That is the goal. So I hope so. We would love to do schooling, like a couple of like local schooling shows this summer. My daughter's goal is she wants to do like an intro dressage test off the lead line, because last year I ran next to her in Cloud while she did the test. And then my goal is I'm hoping to do training level at like the same type of shows, like local, little, that kind of thing, to get used to showing.
That seems like 2 very achievable goals.
I think that it will be fun. I mean, we can already do the tests, but
that's half the battle.
As I remind her, is somebody told me when I was younger and showing was that you get 20% away from home of whatever you have at home.
Yes. Yes. My mom's rule when I was growing up was always, you have to do the level above what you want to do without stirrups in order to show it.
Ooh.
So if I wanted to do a walk trot class, I had to be able to walk trot canter without stirrups. If I wanted to jump 18 inches, I had to know how to jump, 2 feet without stirrups.
That's impressive.
Right? It was I should have been a more cautious rider with that as my base. I wasn't. I am now, though. Now I really pull on that. And I think that it's a great way to look at things. And I feel like it's a really concrete thing to say to other people, too. Like when someone's like, what? I want to show this thing. Can you do the next level without stirrups?
Yeah. And I like the idea that you should always be schooling a level above what you're showing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I never want to be in the show ring being like, I'm going to cross my fingers and hope this happens. Like, I want to know that it's going to be good.
Right. No, and that's the reason why I had a cross-country test when I was showing forever ago, where I lost one of my stirrups halfway through. Like, lost it. It was off the saddle. Like, I just landed weird and popped it off of the stirrup iron and it was gone.
Yikes.
And I was like, okay. And I just dropped my other one in between fences and pulled it over the front of my saddle and finished the course without stirrups.
That's awesome.
Because I could. And I was like, I'm going to piss him off a whole lot more if I tried to do this with one. So I guess we're going to do it with none.
That is like the total thing that as a kid you'd be like, this is so fun. And now you'd be like, oh no.
Oh yeah. I thought I was like the coolest kid there, which, like, granted, it does look pretty cool to come through the finish of your cross country without stirrups and be fine. That is arguably very cool. As an adult, I would have to talk myself down from a panic attack to, like, finish the end of the course.
Yeah, definitely.
So based on kind of everything that we've talked about, what is a piece of advice that you would want to give to an amateur rider?
I think that you really have to find your why with horses, because it is a non-linear process, and you really need the base of it to be that you love spending time with horses, and that even if all you do is go and brush your horse, that, like, you're still going to think that's fun. I think it's really important to have, like, that all-around piece, because riding is the best part, and of course that's, like, primarily what I want to do, but it's really important, especially starting out, to have that whole picture.
Totally. I think that's super fair. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, Lauren. It was so nice to hang out with you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. And we'll talk to you later. Thank you for joining us this week at the Horse Girl Gazetteer. You can find us online at Horse Girl Gazetteer on Facebook or Instagram, and Horse Girl Gazette on TikTok and Patreon. You can also email us questions or comments at horsegirlgazetteer@gmail.com. If you find yourself enjoying our content, please leave us a review and share the link with your friends to help others find their way here. Any and all support is greatly appreciated. Talk to you later.